This line of Michael Brecker is the most normal he plays throughout this whole solo. I'm going to show you some incredible musical hacks by Michael Brecker. He's using these hacks when playing the solo on Recordame. In all the phrases in this solo, there are one or more ingenious things that he's playing I want to get around. I'm not sure I make the whole solo because this is a whole lifetime study. This small teaser sets the inside and outside playing in perspective. This is the most outside he's playing in the whole tune. I'll come back to this later in the video. We're moving between some really normal 2-5-1 lines to some really obscure lines using pentatonics and tritone substitutions. But it's all in there. So let's get to it. Let's start this video on amazing Michael Brecker stuff. Let's start with some quite normal phrases. This part of the solo is amazing, not so much of what Michael Brecker actually plays, but what he does not play. His focus is so much on the basic chord notes, but lying higher in the chord, like the 4th, the 5th or the 9th. When you want this open sound, a great thing to do is working with the upper structures of the chords, where you use the upper structures as target notes and the roots are only passing tones. Train these chords by thinking the root but playing the upper structure when you train them in your practice sessions. Another great thing about all Michael Brecker phrases is that he's making amazing voice leading. He leads so melodically into the next phrase, starting on that F sharp, leading into that E and then to that D. In this next part, he's more or less ignoring the chord tones, but he's still following the chords, but really using melodic structures. These two patterns are really outside playing, but it's not further away than a tritone substitution on that G7. Both those patterns fit into the tritone substituted dominant scale.
Particularly when I'm recording, I've been trying to concentrate on playing melodically and less mechanical.
What's really interesting here is the rhythm and the melodic approach he's using. His first focus is on that end interval, repeating that end interval in each section. But then he switches and focuses on the interval going up instead. And then at the same time slowly moving these patterns down through the chords, ending on that G on that A flat major chord. A really sweet trick Michael Brecker is doing is using his half-step movements. Michael Brecker is moving these patterns down in half steps, and for a fact this is something he really practiced in his practice sessions. I can really recommend you to practice this. Try taking any pattern and move it up or down in half steps. This is also a great technical training. When you are applying half-step movements into your licks and phrases, you really take the lines out of the key. I mentioned rhythm. When you want to play these melodic lines, you need to add rhythm. If you look at what Michael Brecker is doing here, he's moving the same line on different beats. Train this by taking one target note in each bar and then play rhythms with it. See if you can repeat the rhythm, see if you can repeat the pattern of the rhythm. Extending this, take a few notes in the bar, move this pattern around, add it into the rhythm, see where you can fit it, see where you can move it around. I really like this kind of simple training because it leads you to great ideas when you're playing solos. The next line is basically an A minor line going into that G major chord. It's super obvious, he's hitting all the target notes on the beats of the chord, magic. And at the end he's hitting that A sharp, that's the 3rd of that F sharp 7, and he's making it into a great suspension over the bar line. To give you something to work with, I have added the full Michael Brecker solo on Recordame into the lesson manual. Further, all examples, all exercises and a lot of licks inspired by Michael Brecker's lines are in there too. Get it in the lesson manual on Patreon, the link is in the description. The next 4 bars are a masterpiece of not using the root, and again this makes the sound so open. One of the tones Michael Brecker is emphasizing in this phrase is the major 7 on the minor chord. This gives that minor chord an unearthly sound, playing that major on minor. When you're playing any kind of minor chord, you can use the minor major sound on those, even a small 2-5-1. And then you get this really nice outside sound. Here comes a nice long 2-5-1 line. Over that long D minor chord in Recordame, Michael Brecker is playing a long 2-5-1 instead. D minor G7C. You should really check this out and try to play it. And in the middle of the line, Michael Brecker pulls out the chromatic power. His chromatic power is adding chromatic lines together. What he's doing is always go directly towards the target note. It's not bebop, it's Michael Brecker going directly into the target note through chromatic lines. And yes, there are some chromatic tones under the target notes too, I know. What I mean by the direct chromatic notes is that Michael Brecker is not considering what's on and off the beat regarding the target notes. He's going directly for the main target note. So if I compare this to how you will play this a little bit more old school bebop, it could sound like this. Whereas Michael Brecker would use many more chromatic direct approach notes. And still going all in on hitting those target notes. And here it comes, Michael Brecker is playing the most normal line there is. That G flat is out, but it's only a chromatic passing tone. The rest is totally mainstream bebop jazz which you can play anytime. Steal these lines. If you're looking into Michael Brecker's solo, you always get some kind of rock and roll.
I neglected to mention, I guess, that I'd always been playing rock and roll and R&B, you know.
Michael Brecker was very inspired by rock and roll. And one of his trademarks are those bends up to the high note. Take this bend up to the high D. Make sure you start lower with lowering your lip. Pull that tone down, and when you get to the tone, you pull up again. The rest of this funky line is really straight timing. You almost hear that his timing is different here, because he plays it more funky, mixing the 8 notes with the double time. Then we get into this super fast line. I cannot play it yet, but I'll get there. Let's take this apart and look at what is. The first thing is that major 7 on that minor chord, which makes the first thing Michael Brecker is playing an A7 going into D minor. And then again the super trademark moving chromatically up to that high C. We know that Michael Brecker is very inspired by Coltrane.
If I heard a lick that I like, I'd steal it. You know.
And of course he stole a lot of Coltrane's lines. If you take these phrases out of the Michael Brecker lick, you get pure Coltrane. Add these 4-note phrases together and listen. When you want to approach Michael Brecker's sound, I really recommend you to check out a lot of Coltrane. So let's just do this phrase, the most far out phrase he plays. In that first big jump arpeggio thing, Michael Brecker is playing a C-sharp minor pentatonic scale. And in the second bar he's playing an A-flat and a B-flat triad. The 2 triads are the easy part. This is A-flat sharp 11. Play around with this sound and you can easily add that A-flat sharp 11 sound into your licks. You get this funny sound in that A-flat major at the end. I really dig it. About that C-sharp minor pentatonic scale. This I believe is an A major chord, which means that Michael Brecker is using the half-step pattern displacement, playing 2 major chords next to each other, the A major and the A-flat major. And you get this extremely altered sound. Get the full transcript of the Brecker solo and Recordame, plus all exercises, lots of licks in the style of Michael Brecker in the lesson manual on Patreon. The link is in the description. A must do is checking out this video where I'm looking into Michael Brecker's practice advice. Play music, have fun.